One, we are live. Hello and welcome to PropTechBuzz, a podcast channel where we talk to PropTech founders and CEOs from all over the world and learn from them insights about building PropTech companies. Today, I have an exciting guest with me. Her name is Garima. Garima is the co-founder at Enlite. Enlite uses technology to revolutionize the real estate industry. She has spent all her working years building high growth startups. In a previous stint, Garima was part of the core team at the Momsco. We are going to find out what that entity was. In her earlier stint, she had worked as an early core team member of one of the globally largest hospitality startup called Oyo, and she has helped the company achieve scale by enabling strategic partnership and new product category launches. So with that, let's welcome Garima. Garima, welcome to PropTechBuzz. How are you doing today?
Thanks a lot, Ravi. Doing really well. And thank you so much for having me here and giving me an opportunity to tell a lot about a lot of things. Thank you so much.
Looking forward to this. I just quickly let me do an audio check, and now the mic is. I change the mic. Yes. Yes, Garima, before we get into the meteor stuff, I briefly touched upon your career trajectory, but I would love you to take us through your career trajectory on how has it been and till the point where you conceived Enlight.
So I always refer to myself as the startup child when a lot of people ask me what have I done before, because startups have been glamorous only in last 3 or 4 odd years. But back when I started out my journey, neither were people very aware of exactly what it is like to be in a startup in India, or rather what is one. So this was back in 2014 when I entered into being a part of startups, which was a stroke of luck, I would say, because before that I was working with a large conglomerate for a while and heading a APAC division in there. But as chance has it, I happened to meet somebody who was working on a very exciting idea, and back then it was an idea.
Mhm.
And this idea did not have a website or a URL, and it was called Oyo Rooms back then.
Mhm.
And the thought was that let's standardize a lot of hotels which exist in the world today. The idea seems very doable today, but back then, to even comprehend it yourself, let alone explain it to people what you were doing, was quite a task.
Right.
So that is when I started my career with this company, which was just very fledgling. And of course, we did not have much properties back then when I joined. So when I had to tell my family and friends what I was doing, nobody could understand what was startups and what was this OYO. That is what everybody referred to it as.
Oh,
But I,
wow.
yeah. And in fact, a lot of times my family would say that it is a hotel chain. So, what do you exactly do in a hotel after engineering and MBA? Not sit on a reception, we assume. So, that is how it started. But I would say that was the best decision I took for me
Mm.
personally, professionally. The growth that I had there was a 0 to 1 growth, not only for the company, but a 0 to 1 growth for me as well.
So
So,
what stage of OYO did you join? Was it very at the formative stage or
it was. It
I see.
was.
Okay.
So, in fact, as I tell you, it was not for explaining it to the hotel owners and getting them onboarded. It
Mhm.
was for us internally to figure out that actually what's happening, what do we do? So, right from identifying the properties that we will have, what standardization does it take? What does standardization even mean in the first place in hospitality industry? To be in part of assets which you do not own,
Right.
what does it take? It was a very different challenge back at that point.
Right.
And startup just meant, okay, being in a company which is really small, but we want it to grow and to compete with the likes of Marriott's and all these other chains. So that was something interesting. And in fact, by the time that I left Oyo, I think we were around 10,000 odd people
Wow.
already. We were present in multiple geographies. So then I did not have to explain to anybody what was OYO. Everybody knew. Okay, or if you were in OYO at that point in time, then definitely you do understand startups. One need not explain what was OYO doing, what was startups, because 3, 4 years down the line, startups had become more mainstream.
Right.
So that is how my journey started with startups. And I was with Oyo for a long time, worked across all the functions possible, from marketing to sales to knocking doors of the hotel owners, signing contracts. And I there are things that I have done which only I know, but interesting things, needless to say. And I think everybody back then was just excited to be a part of an organization which they could call their own. So that was the start for me.
Which regions, by the way? Just curious, which regions were you operating?
So I was based out of Bombay. But the good thing was, there was a vertical that I had started up, which was called the startup vertical. So becoming their one-stop solution for stay, because of which I could set up and onboard a lot of people pan India. So Bangalore was the place to be when it came to startups. So I worked with the likes of Swiggy, Zomato, Jabong back then, Mintra, and everybody. And again, Delhi was one. Delhi Gurgaon was again another place where a lot of startups were there. So the good thing was, you could identify a business, figure out the base, and just get started. There was nobody stopping the area per se. I think those things, once a company grows up, then you have to organize things a little or a lot more. But by then, I had completed 4 5 years, so I don't think I was so much of a part of that organizational structure later on.
Got it. And
Yeah.
then what happened?
And then I was like, okay, now what new do I do? Because I think, when I think of me, I like to take risks, and I like to be in ideation or formative stage of companies. Just being another cog in the wheel has never been me. So then I happened to meet another very dynamic person. His name was Mohit, and he was just starting out. And again, I always have to reach the stage when there's no website of the company and nobody knows what do we do. And they were building a skincare product in a new category which was called the Momsco, and it was meant only for pregnant mothers.
Ah, I
Now,
see.
pregnant mother as a category does not exist in the form of products in India. Baby
It
care
exists.
does.
It exists today, not then, maybe, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Not then. So, baby care had existed by then, but these 9 months of care was the category that they wanted to target through specialized products made only for new mothers or to be mothers. And we made some amazing products there, which was for the first time for this category, all toxin free natural products. They had done R&D for 1.5 year already. So my founders were Mohit and Malika, whose brainchild it was, and I was the first person to join the company, so as to say. And again, it was a very fulfilling 1 year, because suddenly from Oyo to a mother care was a huge shift,
Yeah.
because you're talking to hotel owners day in and day out and telling them all about it, or discussing rack rates and occupancy, and suddenly you're in a category which is much more sensitive,
Yeah.
and they have their different concerns. So here also, when it came to Momsco, I did a lot of things around it. I did sales, business development, offline and online presence of Momsco, marketing, sales. There were times when we wouldn't have blog writers to write blogs. I would even write blogs. I'd be
Right.
like, okay, let's do this. So a lot of things around whatever it takes to set up a business. I think Mohit and Malika were good guidances to do that. So for about a year and a half, I was at the Mom School. Today, um, if I have to speak of Momsco, it has been now acquired by a group called Good Glam Group in India, and it's the largest D2C exit in India till date.
Good. How do you spell? Is it GUD?
GWD, Good Glam,
GWOD. Okay.
Double M, Good Glam Group.
Okay, okay. No, I came to know of another. I know of another brand called GUD, and they make products for menstruating women. And I had interviewed
Okay.
him on my podcast as well. So that's where I
Oh,
got mixed up. All right,
fine.
great. And you stayed there for one and a little more than a year, I
Yeah, a
suppose, right?
little more than a year.
Okay, and then what happened?
And then nothing happened. It had been happening for a while. There was a thought that, Ritesh is doing amazing things, Mohit is doing amazing things. I really want to do something. I love being a part of high growth organizations. I love giving it all I have in the terms of work, but
Right.
still there's always an itching idea that Why can I not? If I'm already putting in so much effort, is there not an idea that I can think of
Mm.
and do something? So it had been a while, and especially I think working very closely with Ritesh and Mohit, I was like, one guy is 19 years old, the another guy has left his McKinsey partner job, and what will it take? What push will it take for me to be doing it? So I think it was more than enough for me. And being part of only startups and startups, I was like, okay, all what I'm looking for is a large problem to be solved.
Right.
I don't want to start something because I had a lot of ideas. There was a point in which every week I had a new idea, and I
Mm.
would take it to either my mentors that I had back then or my friends, and I'd be like, this idea is superb. This is definitely going to work. And they'd be like, but what about the last week's one? I'm like, no, it was useless. I thought I slept over it over the weekend. I think it was useless.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I can understand. Especially in the early days, you're always
Yes.
you're always you get excited and then you sleep over. Next day it dumps down till the time you find that one idea which will not let you sleep. So very
Right.
curious. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, me and I have a co founder. There was a thought that what is going to grow in
Mm.
next 3 to 4 years, and I'm talking about back in 2017, artificial intelligence and IoT were overused words, but an
Mm.
unused technology.
Right.
And if you could use these technologies, what is the final area where you could apply where nobody had applied it? Because AI has been used in a few verticals. If you think of a fintech, if you think of a lot of SaaS products, AI is used there. IoT still had been a buzzword till 2017. So the thought was the most unexplored category is real estate. Nobody does anything about it. It's a cash cow. Now you don't want to touch a cow which is giving you milk.
Mm.
So you don't think about what fodder and grass should I feed that cow because the cow is doing well.
Right.
Uh, so then the thought was that, but what in real estate? Real estate is the biggest industry possible. It's
Right.
a $1.3 trillion dollar asset class.
Right.
What is the problem that you have to pick up here, which you could be also solving at scale, and which is not your problem, which is not five people's problem, but it is a problem which exists. It's a
Right.
gap which exists, which you
Right.
could fulfill. And that is something which I had learned from Oyo and Momsco. To actually disrupt a category, you can define a category. You can be a category leader. Nobody's thinking of standardizing a set class which you do not own. Nobody's thinking of creating products for a category which does not exist. But when you do, then it's suddenly a category. Then you see competition, which means that your idea is definitely validated. So
Can we
that's, yeah.
unpack that a bit? How do you, so if there is no category existing, h- first of all, what's the category for the audience who do not understand, and how do you envision creating a category? Let alone category leader. Category leader it comes later, right? So could you unpack that a bit?
So there are certain problems which are right in our face, and people create solutions for them.
Hmm.
For certain things, there are solutions which are, let's say, stopgap solutions. So I'll give you an example, and the best example to me is Uber.
Mhm.
It's not that a local taxi did not exist before in any part of the world. All you had to do is whistle and wave your hand, and the person would stop.
Right.
But can you really rely on that service? You have an emergency. It could be raining, it could be anything, and you need a cab. But can you rely on your wave of the hand because somebody might stop, somebody might not stop? I stay in Bombay, which is akin to Kali Pilis.
Hmm.
That is what everybody used. There is a auto rickshaw with a meter, and there's a Kali Pili. Why would you need a solution?
Hmm.
So nobody was looking for a solution because to people that's not a problem.
Yeah.
You go downstairs, you wait for 15-20 minutes, you
Yeah.
have to go for the airport, leave 4 hours early, you'll wave a hand, you'll find something.
Right. I mean,
And
if you just
yeah,
imagine Uber did not exist, and you have to explain somebody that I am coming up with solution, but they would say, "What's the point? I
correct.
wave my hand. There's a car already. There's a taxi already," and they would rubbish this idea off.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So that's the thing. So it's not really a solution that people are looking for. And
Mm.
then when Travis comes up with this idea and actually implements, today it's very difficult to even envision, oh my God, if Uber was not there, what would I do? Because the vehicle ownership went down, the ease
Exactly.
grew up,
Yeah.
the convenience is like none other. So to me, Uber is a category creator. And if you, the company which I identify the most to, especially when I think of Enlight, is Tesla again.
Mm.
There are cars, there is GM, there is Ford, there is Merck. Along the spectrum, there are more and more cars. And there comes up a car company which is not saying I'm making a better diesel car or a petrol car. He's
Right.
not saying I'm providing you more mileage per hour because of this fuel that you use. He's like, I'm electric. Now compete with that. Again, not a solution that people were looking at. Maybe people were talking about some alternate sources of having fuel. But when somebody comes up with that kind of a solution and establish a category, then people follow the suit. Now everybody wants to make electric cars.
Right.
From a Ford to a Merck, there is no car which is left untouched, no car company. Same with the Uber category. Now everybody wants in different variations to serve the people through aggregation. So to me, that was always the idea. What if you could create the category and you were the first one in it?
Right.
Then you are the name which is identified to that category and everybody else can follow.
That is, does it always have the first mover advantage? The first person who creates a new category gets this advantage of being identified with the category. Is that true? Or sometimes a second mover can move fast and capture that mind share of a identity with that category?
So actually, that's a very good question because while I might say no, definitely, if you look at all the examples, it's the first mover advantage. But at the end of the day, if you look practically, it's only the execution.
Hmm.
Whosoever executed it well.
Right.
Because when we look at the same Uber in India, along with Ola,
Hmm.
Ola in its initial days was able to execute and capture a larger market share.
Got it. Yeah.
Whosoever executes well, but still, uh, when you talk about that category, you like to say, I'm Ubering it. Or
Hmm.
you would like to say that, like how I'm Googling it.
Yeah,
The
it becomes a
category,
verb. Yeah, it
yeah,
becomes a verb. Yeah, the
yeah,
noun becomes a verb, and that's when you know you have you have that
right.
identity of the category. Got it. Okay, cool.
Absolutely. But yeah, execution is the key. Without that, you might say whatever. You could be the first person, you could be the fourth person, but if done well and executed well, then you're the person
Got
who
it.
did it.
So did you have a new category in mind with Enlight? What was going on in your mind? What was the category you were thinking or imagining?
So honestly, Ravi, when we started out, while the thought was there, but the product was not clear. So back then, the thought was that it has to be a solution for the real estate which can serve needs of the larger set of people. And there are multiple personas in a real estate, from a owner to a developer to a person who manages real estate, somebody who sits inside the real estate. There are 20, 30 odd different personas in it. So who do you solve for? So when we started the company, it was still a lot to do with energy efficiency because okay, what gets wasted in a real estate? Energy is what gets wasted in a real estate. A lot of natural resources, manpower resources get wasted in a real estate. That's how we started. But 1.5 year into making solutions, working with customers, we realized that this is really not moving the needle that we would want to, because this is again a small niche problem. While we thought that we were solving it for the larger part of the real estate, we were still constricted to that. Okay, energy is being wasted, and what small solution do we build for energy? But it's a very small part of it.
Right.
And then I think with the commencement of COVID, which was unfortunate, of course, but it gave us a lot of time. Now all the real estate was closed and everybody was sitting at home, so it gives you some cooling off period to think that then what is that big idea? If real estate is closed today, energy is not being used, then what did you solve for?
Hmm.
Right? And then once that things open up, what is it that you are going to be solving for? It has to be a needle mover.
Hmm.
And then is when we started toying with the idea of creating a wireless solution for this entire built world, and things around what would be a part of the solution. How would it help the real estate? Will it have a bigger needle moving power as opposed to what we were doing earlier? So this is how the thought started. And I think once the thought started, we started working with a lot of other industry leaders like Qualcomm, like Amazon Web Services to figure out that what does it take to create a very disruptive solution in this industry? Is it something that has not existed? We're doing it for the first time. Are we looking at reinventing something through a different technology? And all of these things combined together finally yielded into a solution 2.5 years later, after all the R&D and making a product, which today we call Know Your Building.
Could you explain the problem that I still did not get it. So you said, what's a built world, by the way, for those of us who do not understand, what does built world mean?
Any brick and mortar structure in which we are is a built world.
Got
So,
it.
from a residential building to a commercial building, a warehouse, a hospital, a hotel, a school, everything that is made up of a brick and mortar is the
Got
built world.
got it. And what's the problem you will be solving with a wireless solution?
Today, if you think of the built world, now a large part of the buildings in the part of the world that I am in or you are in have been constructed already.
Right.
Especially when you look at Europe, there are so many heritage buildings.
Right.
When you look at emerging economy like India, a lot of buildings have been built and are being built. So, what is the problem with all this urbanization and having all these buildings? The problem is more than just constructing a building. When you operate a old building or a new building, what actually happens in a building? So, people talk about climate change today.
Mhm.
When you think of climate change, almost 65% of the energy that is consumed and wasted is by the buildings.
Right.
It could be a mix of residential, commercial, warehouse, schools, hospitals, whatsoever. But 65% of it is a very huge number.
Mhm.
Now, one might think, why is it wasted? Because how do you manage it? If you're not monitoring something, how can you manage that? In our houses, we would be always shouted at by our parents that, okay, switch off the lights if you're not sitting here, switch off the fans.
Mm.
In a building, what happens? You might be one person sitting in the entire floor and you still have all the AC to yourself.
Hmm.
The entire lights would be still working. There would be other water systems which would be running. I'm so sorry, but my voice is echoing. Is it the same for you?
No, you're perfectly all right at my end.
Okay. Okay. So it was somehow still echoing at my end. Okay. Not a problem.
I can understand how frustrating that is. So let's see if we can solve that. What I could do is, what could I do? I do not know what could I do. Is it still echoing your own voice, or
Let me hear myself. A little, yes, but I'll try to speak. Listen to
okay?
myself and speak. That's okay. Yeah. So what happens is these commercial buildings of any kind are always unattended. There might be people there, but there are so many elements which utilize energy inside a building. We might see lights and AC, but there are water treatment plants, there are chillers, there are boilers, there are elevator systems. There are so many things which consume all this electricity, and you cannot assume that a person, first of all, will be manning these systems all the time. And let's say, even if a person is manning these systems, how would you know that things have gone wrong inside them? Would
Hmm.
you really know when a AC is not working in a commercial building? Because at our houses, we still have split, which we get serviced once or twice a year, and we change the bulbs. But imagine when machinery breaks down in buildings, the kind of man days, labor, and the cost that it takes to first of all get it rectified is a lot, and second, imagine the wastage that it would have done when the machinery is towards already its end of life.
Hmm.
And how do you manage this? And are we expecting people to be there in buildings all the time? Because there is no remote viewing possible, unlike every other use case which has remote viewing all the time. Even when you book cabs or you order things on e-commerce, you can still track everything. How are you tracking things inside a building?
Correct.
Nothing can be tracked.
Got it.
Idea was to have something which is, first of all, remote. You can view how your building is operating in the terms of all the elements inside it. It could be AC, it could be your elevator system, parking system, escalator system, each and every equipment which is electromechanical in nature
Right.
has to be viewed remotely.
Right.
Now, the second thing is that monitoring was not enough. How can you control it? Do you really need people inside to be controlling these systems now?
Right.
Not essentially. Because the thing that technology provides you is to do whatever you want, howsoever you want it.
Hmm.
And we were a company which was working into deep tech, which was for us IoT. Having IoT and having devices that could be made wireless could be as simple as controlling your equipment from a distance.
Right.
So then we made these hardware devices which could be then applied to these end applications of a building, which was AC, elevator, lights, etc. And remotely now they could be controlled. You could see their consumption patterns, usage patterns, and at the same time, the devices were capable of controlling these things remotely from
Hmm.
anywhere at any point in time.
Got it.
And when you look at this holistic solution, Ravi, this is what something which is a building management system is.
Right. Yeah.
So now you might ask that building management system has existed. Why would you even think of making a building management system? There are companies like Honeywell and Siemens, which are
Exactly.
106 years old into it.
I mean, they also operate in smart buildings and a bit of IoT. I do not know. I do not have access to that information. But maybe you can let us know what's the disparity between them and your vision.
This is where we chose to be a category creator. Because again, building management systems have existed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Honeywell is 106 years old, Johnson Controls is about 70 years old, and then why did we decide to do it in the first place? Now, how things happen traditionally, you have to identify problems and friction points there.
Hmm.
So, when you think of a building management system today, first of all, it has to be only implemented when your building is at a nascent stage.
Hmm.
To be able to monitor each and every electromechanical equipment requires, first of all, that amount of wiring and cabling to run up to your equipment from a main controller.
Right.
What if you did not think of it at the greenfield stage? You cannot break down your existing building to pull up wires and route to control.
True.
And that is why any brownfield building does not retrofit a building management system.
Okay. Or if it at all can, it will be too expensive, I suppose.
It will be.
Right.
It will be extremely expensive. Even a greenfield building uses, let's say, if a controller costs X, 20% of X goes into the cabling and the wiring cost of building management system.
Hmm. Wow.
And let's say if you miss an equipment, you cannot pull a wire for that anymore because your building management system is a proper system which sits in the basement of the building.
Right.
And let's say you're at the 10th floor. How's that even going to happen? Not
Right.
possible. That was one thing. And now the second thing is that these are very traditional systems. So when they started out, they were very proprietary. Like if you have a system from company A, it would not talk to the system from company B.
Hmm.
And you have company A making a solution for AC and company B making a solution for water management. There was no way possible in which you could make the two interact, see the data in a unanimous way onto a singular platform, or even utilize their data together to make more sense out of it because these systems would be interoperable. Sorry, non-interoperable.
So I did not know. So I have briefly read somewhere that now there are open standards for these devices to talk into each other. There are new communication protocols which is enabling this. I think Google Nest and there's especially smart buildings. And I'm talking about residential buildings actually, not commercial. Maybe you can shed, since you are in the industry, you can shed more light. Are there is there no open standards yet and interoperability solved?
So, first of all, let's talk about the home and the Google Nest part. So, these are smart home solutions, which mean one home and a plethora of solutions in that one home, and which means you're on the same network all the time.
Right.
So, all your devices, it's not essentially to be on the same protocol, but as long as they're on one network, because either they are going to be propelled by a Bluetooth or a Wi Fi,
Right.
that's why they can talk to each other.
Hmm.
Now, the problem with commercial building is there are certain controllers which are now more open protocol. But let's think about in the home when there was a common network. In the building, there's no common network because these devices do not talk on a network. These
Mm,
are wired devices.
I see.
They are connected to each other by a wire, and that wire finally goes into a supervisory system, which is sitting as a desktop application in your terminal.
Right.
Now, which means it's not a laptop that you're carrying anywhere and looking at your system. You're still sitting in your building in a basement,
Right.
connected to a device which was cabled up there, and you can only view it there.
Right.
And I'm glad that you brought that point up, because what goes in a home is a common network, and that was the thought that we have. What if we could get devices on a common network?
Mm,
Which now means that you could have one building or 10 buildings. You could have a same platform for your entire portfolio of buildings, because
okay.
the controllers are now network based controllers, which means they are running on some wireless technology like a Wi-Fi or internet. All
Right.
you need to do when anything is on internet, you just need to open a URL system to log in and
Right.
see what is happening here.
Right.
So interoperability was one part of it, but the bigger challenge it solved was, you as a builder who might have 20 buildings in 10 different states can now log in and see at any given point in time, real time, what is happening across that entire portfolio of building, because all your buildings are now networked through
Mm,
a wireless technology, and then the data goes to the cloud, for which you just have to open one simple URL. And this is not how a traditional building management system operates.
got it. Got it. Okay. Cool. And then what's the solution like? The end product like?
So the end product is a amalgamation of hardware and software. So
Right.
as a company, we make the entire suite of solution, the hardware, the software, firmware, everything is done in house. So the device is a small, very small device, and you can think of it like your phone.
Mm,
How, when for the first time you unbox your phone, you want to start the internet, the simple thing that you do is just go in, open your Wi-Fi settings, and hook it up to your house's network or your
right.
office's network.
Right.
So the hardware device is as simple as that. You just go, it comes with an app. You can go and just put in the network settings into it, and it is done.
Hmm.
Which is again unlike any BMS, because to program one simple hardware, if you have to do a building automation through these hardware, it takes about 3 months of time.
Right.
So that is one hardware, and then is the cloud platform on which all of the data through these different hardware finally goes. This platform is called Know Your Building platform.
Hmm.
So the hardware directly talks to the platform, and this platform has artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities.
Okay. Hmm.
The reason for putting these capability into the system was simple, that good, we finally have figured out how to monitor everything inside a building, how
Right.
to automate things inside a building,
Right.
but how to manage them better. So,
Yeah.
using machine learning today, we are able to figure out even how different equipments from different companies work. A Blue Star can be very different to a Daikin, can be
Mm,
very different to a Schneider, and so on. So,
mm,
how do these functions? Predictive maintenance is a very important part in any building today, in any commercial establishment, because it's not easy to first of all be able to identify the things that could go wrong and then the things that have gone wrong.
right.
So for this, we use artificial intelligence as well as the ML capability. And at the same time, it provides a holistic view of the entire portfolio to the end customer.
Right.
And every customer to us is different, because a owner of a building will have a very different view compared to a facility manager of a building. One will be seeing day
Mm,
to day operations,
mm,
somebody else will be seeing the overall operations at a more monetary level
got it.
of operating those buildings.
Yeah.
So that's how the solution is designed today.
Got it. I think reporting and dashboarding are monthly. So when you're talking about predictive maintenance, maybe efficiency of different machines. I do not know commercially what can be efficient. Like I have worked for a year in an IoT company, but we were working with
Oh,
factory owners. So
Okay.
our solution was also on predictive maintenance, where we would install sensors to see what is the usage at any given point of time, and give them efficiency of their factory setup. So I completely can relate to this in terms of commercial buildings, because I'm sure there are opportunities to make them efficient and stuff like that. Cool. So, what stage of the product maturity your offering has today, and like, are there customers already? How long has it been? Maybe a bit around that.
So we launched the solution commercially last year in the month of July.
Okay.
And we took about 2.5 years of R&D to develop the solution. We've
Right.
taken a lot of time to find out the PMF of the solution, and did a lot of piloting in different premises to see what we were developing was definitely what the world needed. And today, in about 6 to 8 months of launching this, we already have covered about 10 million square feet of area.
Ah,
We
nice.
are live at about 30 odd locations,
Nice.
um, as an entire solution. So we do have a lot of good customers, I would say, and some interesting partnerships in place. So
Mm,
apart from just working with the end real estate owners, we work with a few companies which are hardware companies in real estate. So imagine a company making AC solutions in
mm,
a very traditional way. They want to take the solution in a IoT way to the cloud.
mm,
So our controller, the hardware and the software can help them do it. So we're working with some of the largest names globally in the industry to
right.
even take their solutions to the cloud. And by the end of this year, we plan to reach about footprint of 300 odd buildings.
Nice.
So I think next 10 months are going to be interesting, and also we are looking at expanding in Middle East. So
Excellent.
that's where things are for us.
Excellent. Where is it headquartered, by the way? Is it in Mumbai, Bangalore?
So we're based out of Bombay, but
Ah,
today
okay.
we have regional offices everywhere because once we started out, then we started hiring people from the industry. So one interesting thing about building this solution, Ravi, is when we started making a solution into BMS, we did not hire anybody from the BMS industry.
Ah, okay. Because you wanted new ideas to creep in. Otherwise, you would only assume how things have been working all this while, right?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Because when people come with experience, there's always a bit of a cynicism in trying something new. So
Mm,
the person that we had for hardware had worked in a defense organization.
mm,
Somebody who is working on the software had been building SaaS platforms.
mhm.
Somebody on the firmware was building applications for the Android, and that is how we started out. So in the initial discussion in the company, I was saying that we have to build this BMS, a wireless BMS, and one of the guys like, but why are we building a battery management system? I'm like, man, okay, this is quite something. These people really don't know the industry much, but
Mm,
this is going to be helpful. So once
nice.
that we started building the sales teams, that
Right.
is when we got people from the industry, because I think they are the best people to know what we've built and then
Right.
take it to the market.
Yeah, because you need people with the same vocabulary to communicate. So
Absolutely.
that makes sense. Excellent. So I had a philosophical question to that, which is, could prop tech really make more sustainable societies? Maybe do you want to take a shot on that one?
So let's talk about PropTech like any other industry.
Right.
And a good analogy is e-commerce,
Hmm.
right? People are talking PropTech, and e-commerce seems to be something which has been around for a while. So the first stage in e-commerce was discovery and search.
Hmm.
The second was aggregating that discovery and search.
Right.
And then finally, the third was personalization.
Right.
And that is how the entire market got disrupted for the e-commerce players. Now let's bring it back to PropTech. So the first was discovery, when people in India used to have things like 99 acres and magic bricks, and the US
Hmm.
would have below
Hmm.
to list everything there.
Right.
And now suddenly there was more of aggregation of services, just not the houses, but you could have brokers, you could have tenant services, you could have a lot of facility management services.
Right.
So that was the second stage. Now the third stage is where it requires to be more mindful of why does a prop tech exist, which means the personalization part.
Right.
Today PropTech is all about, or rather was all about, how to make things sooner, faster in this urbanization, make
Right.
more services to aggregate cement, bricks, this, that. But what is it doing in turn is that there's already a 65% wastage
Right.
by whatever we are creating in the terms of buildings. It's going to only go up.
Right.
The emerging economies are building more and more. The older ones are not renovating what already exists. So
Right.
if you think of the buildings, they are locking in the emissions because
Mm.
of the way, first of all, they are constructed, and
Right.
second, how they are running operationally every day. The
Right.
wastage every day is insanely huge. The amount of CO2 that
Mm.
one building, if it could save in about a year, it would be equivalent to planting about 300 odd trees.
Right.
That's how much one building dissipates CO2 in about a year.
Right.
So, what can PropTech really do about it? Because PropTech is not about having a platform like a .com bubble, everything onto the platform, and let me call it PropTech.
Mm.
Can a usage of technology make today's operational things in a building better?
Right.
So, for us, when we look at Enlight or we look at a bunch of solution that people have attempted to do in the western parts of the world, is just not measure what is happening, but being able to actually control and regulate that,
Right.
right? Because there are logged in emissions inside a building. You
Right.
talk about decarbonizing buildings, but monitoring anything will not be enough.
Right.
What is it that a technological solution could do to release those emissions?
Right.
Now, it could be from an old building, or it could be right at the nascent stage of creating a new building.
Right.
So, like what we are trying to do here is we just do not measure the amount of CO2 that a building dissipates through our solution, but we try to control it.
Right.
So, any electromechanical service which
Right.
has been running on its own, now the
Right.
machines run it,
Mm.
keeping in mind your goals of ESG, keeping in mind what a building of this size and this much occupancy would actually require.
Right.
And if not utilized and if not needed, it's going to turn off those things,
Right.
right? So I think there are few solutions that people are talking about now, or on the verge of developing and are experimenting with it, which can look towards a more circular economy, which can look more towards sustainability, which can more look towards, there are a bunch of people making renewable ways of managing a building. So I think that will be interesting to look at, and especially finally, maybe the time of climate tech has arrived,
Mm.
because people are finally thinking about climate tech. Like 3 4 years back, when I would talk to
Right.
people, and especially the VCs, they'd be like, yeah, uh, climate tech is okay, but what do you think about D2C? So
And no, especially maybe in Asia and India, but Europe, climate tech and ESG, there is a lot of regulatory pressure also
right,
on the VCs, because they need to have a certain um, proportion of their portfolio into these companies. So I can
right.
understand. I'm just curious how sensitive, or how is India behaving in terms of ESG, circular economy, sustainability and stuff like that. Like, is there regulatory pressure, or there's no pressure?
So things have started changing in last year or so, because suddenly there is pressure from the government. The government is making building codes, which means everybody does need to report the energy that they utilize on a day-to-day basis, so that you could,
Nice. So
yeah,
just like Europe has energy labeling for every buildings, how green
right.
they are. Do we have we begun to have energy labelings in India for the buildings?
Yes, so building codes is something which is already being a part of the newer policy which is going to come into picture.
Nice.
And after having this, which means not only you have to report the energy and all that you are utilizing, but things like fire, which is
Mm.
a very mandatory thing to have the data of the fire systems working or not on the cloud, the data of water systems and all being on the cloud. So even India is now looking at that, and I think a lot of larger companies, MNCs, are the ones who are the first movers in
Right.
looking towards the ESG part. So they are looking at more climatic controlled solution for their new structure. So it's a very interesting time to be even in India, because I think once that it comes from top down,
Right.
there is, you have to do it, let's put it that way. And when you find four companies who are the largest of the companies doing it, then everybody else does want to follow the suit.
Because once it gets regulated, okay, and there's a regulation pressure also, then it's also easy for you, because then you can help them transition towards more greener buildings,
Right,
more energy efficient buildings. Or like here, since I worked in PropTech, there is incentives to move from the lower energy labeling to the higher energy labeling. Okay, so there are
right,
tax incentives and stuff like that. There are loans that the government approved loans, so that you can renovate your buildings and stuff like that. I'm sure India will catch up to all of this, and I think you are at the very opportune time
right.
to to offer these solutions. Excellent. We talked about Enlight and what's different about Enlight. Is there anything that I might have missed? Because there's so many prop tech companies. Is there anything that is unique, more unique about Enlight?
So, as I said in my last part of addressing even the prop tech, as a company, we are just not a company who's making a URL and saying that because of the .com, I'm on the tech, right?
Hmm.
We are actually making tech solutions. The idea is to be one of the best engineering companies in this domain of real estate and make more and more sustainable solutions. Today, we are in commercial buildings. 6 months down the line, we want to be in data centers, and then we want to be in industrial automation. You have been a part of industrial automation.
Yes.
You know, there is monitoring, which is a very basis of what we do, but there are a lot of other things also which happen in manufacturing as well. So the idea is to keep creating affordably innovative solutions. As a company, we're not a company who wants to make all the amazing solutions and now say, okay, you have to pay us a premium, because whatever you build, the best way to have a solution is when you have your solution everywhere. If
Hmm.
everybody is wasting energy, you need to be a part of all the buildings or premises that are wasting energy.
Hmm.
So what we are trying to do is really make tech as a fulcrum
Hmm.
to create solutions around it. So we work with the likes of Qualcomm, as I mentioned,
Right.
very closely to see that where our wireless technology is heading 5 years down the line. And
Right.
using that tech, can we make a solution today, something very affordable, but something very scalable enough? Something as simple as pairing a Bluetooth device to your phone. Can we make such paired devices for a building and then be able to scale it? So, Enlight, we would like to see it as a hardcore tech enabled company which
Right.
makes solutions at every part. When you think sustainability, you think green building, you think monitoring, whatever you think around real estate, you think of the solutions that Enlight has made. And the reason why we even called our solution Know Your Building or KYB was derived from Know Your Customer or KYC.
Got it. Ah, nice. Okay, so that's the parallel from there. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because people ask, you have done your KYC, okay, you want a loan, KYC, Aadhaar,
Right.
KYC,
Hmm.
XYZ, KYC, so on and so forth. So that was the whole thing, that, can we have such a standard KYB for the
Oh,
buildings
nice.
that, everything, occupancy, energy, the greenness of the building, the compliance of the building, the efficiency of the building. So you think a building, you think KYB.
Nice. I like that. Cool. Well, this brings us to an end of a very fascinating conversation from Garima. Garima, thank you. Your passion comes across, and I have an inkling that this is gonna go places. As I said, you are at the opportune moment to capitalize on solving this. And India, I think there's huge potential, and Middle East, as you said, and maybe Europe. You never know. You could always
Hopefully.
we could always talk about that, since I live here. But thanks for your time, Garima, and sharing your wealth of knowledge to us and our audience.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Ravi. Thanks for your patient hearing and asking me all the questions, which could help me also tell a lot more about what we do at Enlight, because it's a lot to tell
Yeah,
and a lot that we do. So thankful to you for giving me that opportunity.
excellent, Garima. See you around. Bye bye.
See you. Bye.